step into the precinct, pull up a chair, and let's get right to it. Today's case file isn't your standard robbery or, a typical missing person report. No, today we are investigating the anatomy of an absolute obsession. Welcome to The Explainer. I'm your host, and for this session, we're putting on our detective badges to examine a very specific modus operandi. We're looking at the exact structural blueprint for the modern cinematic true crime documentary. We're going to break down, piece by piece, exactly how these stories get under our skin, how they totally hijack our psychology, and why they absolutely refuse to let us go.
Okay, let's dive into this first piece of evidence. Now, every good investigator knows the first 48 hours of a case are absolutely critical, right? Well, for a documentary, it's the first 48 seconds. Take a look at this quote pulled straight from our source file. Start with a shocking hook, such as a disappearance, murder, or unexplained event that has no clear answers. This right here, this is the bait. I'll tell you, as an investigator, when I crack open a file and see a situation with zero clear answers, my pulse quickens. And that's exactly the physical reaction this blueprint demands from the viewer. You can't just ease into the mundane routine of everyday life. No way. You have to drop the audience right into the middle of the trauma, right there at the crime scene, literally before they even know the victim's name. And this brilliantly illustrates the foundational timeline the source demands for pacing a suspense-driven narrative. That shocking hook we just talked about, that's really just step one in a highly calculated four-step psychological trap laid out in our suspects methodology. From there, we move to step two, which is the step-by-step explanation. This is the part where we lay out the timeline, map out who is involved, line up the suspects, and build the theories. Then, just when you think you've cracked the case, bam! Step 3 hits you with twists and hidden clues. A totally new piece of evidence drops out of nowhere. Finally, we hit step 4, the unresolved conclusion. We're definitely going to get to that cold case ending in a minute, but just notice how incredibly structured this whole thing is. It's not just some random collection of interviews. It is a meticulously crafted chronological flow designed entirely to keep you frantically turning the pages of the file.
Processing the visual evidence. All right, let's go a little deeper into the file. To actually catch our culprit here, which is this perfect true crime aesthetic, we can't just listen to the witness interviews. We really have to look closely at the scene itself. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these specific visual tropes build a feeling of intense, real-time investigation. Just review the required elements on this visual checklist from the blueprint. We've got police investigation scenes. We've got close-ups on the evidence, maybe a blood-stained piece of fabric or a shattered window pane. We've got these wide shots of empty streets at night, illuminated by nothing but the frantic, strobing spin of flashing sirens. We are literally watching the discovery of secret clues unfold in real time. And why does this actually matter? Because these visuals completely trick your brain. They make you feel like you are actually riding shotgun in the squad car. It flawlessly mimics the grit of a premium Netflix series, basically pulling you out of your safe, cozy living room and dropping you straight behind the yellow police tape.
But here's the thing. The evidence isn't just what's sitting there in the frame, it's how it's lit, and more importantly, how it feels. Look at these atmospheric enhancements that are strictly mandated by the blueprint. Slow-motion shots designed to make every single agonizing second stretch out. Dark lighting, rain effects, heavy, dramatic shadows. Honestly, any beat cop out there will tell you that a rainy night shift feels about 10 times more dangerous than a sunny Tuesday afternoon. Layering these specific atmospheric instructions actually manufactures a moody, palpable tension. It's deliberate, calculated psychological manipulation. We are setting a deep tone of dread and isolation that makes the entire mystery feel incredibly heavy, deeply atmospheric, and very, very dangerous.
So the crucial point is really the contrast we see in any case file. It's the balance between cold, hard, analytical logic and the heavy, devastating human cost. Our blueprint demands a very careful tightrope walk here. On one side, we have the investigation itself, the logical breakdown, what exactly happened, who are the prime suspects, what are the working theories. But on the other side, we absolutely must have the emotional toll. We have to dig into the victims' backgrounds and look at the shattered reactions of the local community. This right here is what actually gives the documentary its soul. Because without that emotional impact, you're just reading a sterile black and white police report. But by contrasting that sharp detective work with profound human tragedy, the story achieves maximum engagement. You're thinking about the facts with your head, but man, you are feeling the tragedy in your gut. Building the auditory profile. Okay, we've thoroughly processed the visuals, but in any good interrogation room, you're listening just as hard as you're looking. Let's shift our focus to the unseen forces at play here. Check out these audio directives straight from the source file.
First, a deep, serious voiceover narration. You know the type. Someone who sounds like they've seen way too much in their years on the force, methodically walking you through the case step by step. Then you layer in the underlying tension. Suspenseful background music paired with actual, literal heartbeat sounds. I mean, think about that for a second. It literally syncs the viewer's own physiology with the rising panic of the narrative. And then, sudden silence. That is an absolute masterstroke. Let me tell you, in a concrete interrogation room, silence is exactly what makes people finally crack. In a documentary, that sudden silence just drops the bottom right out of the viewer's stomach. It forces you to the absolute edge of your seat, holding your breath, just desperately waiting for the next clue to drop. Defining the modus operandi. Let's move to and see how this builds into the technical specifications that tie this entire master plan together. We have our hooks, we have our visual evidence, and we have our audio profile. Now we lock down the final polish. And here is the exact definition of the required aesthetic requested by our source, an ultra-realistic style. Listen, this is not amateur hour. The blueprint explicitly calls for a 4K cinematic presentation, featuring a moody, meticulously color-graded look. But here is the truly brilliant contradiction at play. Right alongside that high-end, glossy 4K polish, the source specifically requires a handheld camera feel and realistic reenactments. Why? Well, because a purely polished, perfectly smooth film feels like exactly that, a fiction film. But a slightly shaky handheld camera, that feels like truth. It feels like actual documentary evidence hastily captured by a panicked first responder right there on the scene. It grounds that massive cinematic scope in gritty, boots-on-the-ground reality, making the story feel intensely, undeniably real to anyone watching. The cold case ending. You know, you work the leads, you follow the blood trail for miles, you sit there and listen to hours of wiretaps, and sometimes the bad guy just walks away into the night. We are now looking at the ultimate psychological trick demanded by the source text, the deliberate, highly calculated lack of closure. The blueprint explicitly states to end the entire documentary with an unresolved conclusion, or maybe a shocking left-field theory. It absolutely does not want the case wrapped up with a neat little bow. No, it wants the audience haunted. It wants viewers pacing the floor at 2 a.m, stringing red yarn across a corkboard in their own minds. It is a structure entirely designed to leave you sitting there, staring at the scattered evidence, echoing the single, solitary question that matters for a detective: what really happened?